Now, this is a foreigner in the Philippines. I'm going to take you on the next little step of life in a Catholic school, a secondary modern Catholic school in the bad side of Manchester, which is in Lancashire, and it's not. I didn't find it was any great place to be, but a lot of people did like it. But I couldn't wait to get out of it. But there I am to take you back. I am a young boy, about let me see, about 8 or 9, and I could be wrong on that because my head for figures is not great. But let's say that I was 8 or 9, and I was talking in the back of the class. It was a science class, and how did we know it was a science class? Well, not because we learned any science, but they had these long, I guess they're called experimental desks. They were great long things, and they had what at some point or other had been these Bunsen burners and these faucets, these taps that you could run water into a sink. They never worked when we tried it, because if we could have got them to work, we'd have been throwing water all over everybody. Anyway, they never worked for us. Well, it was I think, what was his name? Mr. Ratcliffe, I think. Well, Mr. Ratcliffe was a fairly young teacher, and he was up at the back, and he wanted our attention. Very unreasonable, you think about it, for a teacher. But anyway, we were just boys, being boys, and we were all laughing and joking at the back of the class. And in order to get our attention, in one rash moment of judgmental idiocy, he picked up a wooden board duster and he hurled it to the back of the class, where I was in the middle of finding something very, very funny, when I looked up and I saw something that in an instant grew very large and struck me on the forehead. And I don't know whether you can see it, but well, let me see. Can you see? I've still got a scar on the inside of my on my forehead. Now, I'm going to describe what it must have looked like to Mr. Ratcliffe, who he must have realised at that moment that he'd actually just done something which might cost him his career. Certainly it would have probably cost him his career now, but it didn't then. All I felt was this incredibly sharp, painful blow on the forehead. Bang, like that. Pah. And I immediately, the kids told me later, when they were describing it in graphic details, says, you know what happened? When you got hit by that board duster, you put your hands up to your face like this, and the blood gushed through your fingers. It was great. So, I'm crying, of course. Well, I'm only 8 years old. I'd just been smacked on the head with a wooden board duster, and I got blood running down my face. So, of course, I'm crying. He didn't lose his composure. I was still wrong. He said, go up and see the nurse. I'm amazed that we had a nurse in those days. I mean, it was a poor secondary modern school in the slums. But it was St. Wilfrid'S, and I was sent up to the nurse. I could see by the nurse's face. She said, what happened to you? I said, he threw a board duster over and it hit me in the middle of the face like this, and I got all the blood and he made me in my hands and everything. She said, never mind, dear, it's all right. And she cleaned me up and put a big plaster, which I wore like a badge of honour, in the middle of my forehead. And I went on, and my mother used to say back then that I was a very lippy child. If you're lippy, it means that you talk too much, you talk back too much. So it was near the end of the class, and we were dismissed and I went home. Well, on the way home I'm thinking, this isn't right. Teachers aren't supposed to do this. So I went to the police station on the way home. 8 years old, I marched into Moss Side police station and I looked up at the sergeant behind the desk, and I'm looking up like this at him. And he said, "What happened to you, son?" And I said, "The teacher hit me on the head with a board duster, and he cut my head open, and blood all going down here like this. I want to make a complaint." And I don't know what the sergeant must have thought back then. I mean, right now, in the States anyway, it would have been an uproar. They probably have sent somebody around to rescue, to arrest this idiot. Well, anyway, he said, well, look, son, we can't do anything here right now. Why don't you go home and get your father to come in and talk to us? Well, I went home. And of course my mother says, "So what did you do?" She didn't say, "Oh, you poor thing. So what did you do? You were behaving badly, I bet. What were you doing?" So, well, my dad said, "Well, we're going to have to go in and see about this." So the next day they marched in there and they went to see a new headmaster. The new headmaster was a tall, handsome, a sophisticated man, somebody that didn't belong in Manchester. And he spoke awfully well like this, and very calm. Yes, well, Mr. Flannery, let's try to work something out here. And I wasn't privy to their working anything out. I was sent outside. But what finally transpired was that, and I learned this later, my mother told me later, they spoke to my father and they said, "Look, Father O'Reilly is very sick. And if this gets out," because my father was saying, "Well, perhaps we better go to the bloody newspaper about this then." Anything went wrong in those days, you never really went to the police. You went to a newspaper. You told the newspapers about it. "Well, I'd tell the Evening News about it, won't I?" Well, they said to him, as much as my father would have postured about this, Mr. Cunningham said, "Mr. Flannery, let's be reasonable here. Let's be reasonable. Father O'Reilly is very, very sick. And if this gets out, the smear on the reputation of the school and the church, well, we have to be honest here. If anything happens to Father O'Reilly because of your publicity seeking, we will hold you personally responsible." I thought, well, when I heard this, I thought, well, maybe they'll send him to hell. Or worse, they might send him to limbo. He might be there forever with all those babies lying about on the River Styx. How do I know? Well, they then told me, "Well, we're going to... Well, look here, Terence. I was only ever Flannery when it was in their interest, but on my interest. But when it was in their interest, I was Terence. Well, Terence, look, this is most regrettable what has happened, but and we regret what's happened, and we're so happy that you're all right, aren't we, nurse? Aren't we, nurse?" So I thought, we can't let them get away with this. So I said, "Well, I want an apology. I want him to say he's sorry." To their credit, or to the level of their concern about how nasty this would all look, they brought Mr. Ratcliffe in And Mr. Ratcliffe, gritting through his teeth, said, "I'm sorry." That was as good as it got. So I wore my plaster for another couple of days. I'm not sure whether I had a stitch or not. I don't think I did, but I'll have to look in the mirror later and I'll get back to you on this, okay, whether it was a stitch or not, a stitch in time. So that's another one of my little wonderful life-changing experiences in the bosom of the Catholic Church. Not that I'm against it. This is a foreigner living in the Philippines.